Welcome back to More to the Story, the podcast all about writing, sharing, publishing, creative nonfiction, your true personal stories, books in particular. I'm Janna Maron. I'm your host. So great to have you here. Thank you for being here. Thanks for listening. In addition to this podcast, I also publish a literary arts magazine called Under the Gum Tree, publishing creative nonfiction and visual art. We publish 4 times a year in digital and print. You can learn more about that, the magazine, and submitting and subscribing at the website underthegumtree.com. And I'm also a book coach and editor for women writing nonfiction. And you can learn about all of that work and working with me and the kind of work that I do at my company website, More to the Story. The website is moretothestory.co. And that's right, this podcast is named More to the Story. The business is named More to the Story. Actually, I think the business is named after the podcast because the podcast started before the business, and I already had the name, and it's a great name for the type of work that I do and kind of encompassing all the things. And I always say the podcast is about creative nonfiction, which it is. And I don't think I've said on any single episode that creative nonfiction is an umbrella term that a lot of people in the literary writing publishing world, well, some people distinguish creative nonfiction from things like memoir, essay. I use it for my work to encompass any form of nonfiction, any the magazine publishes creative nonfiction, but we publish flash, we publish essays, we publish memoirs, we publish hybrid. So for the purposes of talking about the work that I do, I use that term creative nonfiction as an umbrella term so that I don't have to always specify all those different niche genres of nonfiction, okay? And some people will even distinguish nonfiction from creative nonfiction. Creative nonfiction is kind of maybe more specifically considered a niche literary genre. Because especially in publishing, nonfiction is maybe thought of more as how to or business or self-help. Well, I've worked with women and even before I started this business, I wasn't working exclusively with women. So I have clients from my previous work who are also men. Anytime they're writing a business book, anytime they're writing a self-help book, guess what? They are still incorporating personal story. So it's still some sort of blend of prescriptive, here's how to do something, let me teach you something, let me improve your life, let me show you how you can help yourself, right? Self-help and improve your life by telling you stories about how either I did it myself or how I helped some of my own clients do it. So as far as I'm concerned, you're still telling your true personal story. And yeah, maybe it's framed in the context of a prescriptive nonfiction book or a self-help book or a business book, but you're still incorporating aspects of your personal story. And so therefore, it still falls under the umbrella of creative nonfiction, personal storytelling. And I can still work with you if what I just described feels like it resonates a little bit more with you than straight up memoir or essay. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that. And maybe I'll start saying that in a little bit more succinct manner on a regular basis, because I don't want people listening to think, what I'm doing doesn't qualify as literary or doesn't qualify as so-called creative nonfiction, so this doesn't apply to me, or I wouldn't be a good fit for her programs or her offerings. And that's not necessarily true. And the best way to figure that out is to reach out. So you can do that by email. You can do that on Instagram. You can do that just by leaving a comment on the Substack post here. Or if you're watching on YouTube, you can leave a comment there. Yes, this podcast is also on YouTube, if you can believe it. Every time I hit record in the audio program, GarageBand that I use, I also hit record just in the QuickTime player, which is what I use on my Mac to put the camera on and record my face while I'm talking to you. So, creative nonfiction. It applies to us all. All of us nonfiction writers are doing something creative with our work, right? And why do we call it creative nonfiction? That's another question that I get frequently, especially from folks who are not in the writing world and are not in the literary writing world and maybe haven't heard that term before. And all it means is that we are applying the same craft to writing and telling a true story that you would expect the author of fiction or poetry to apply to their writing. So if you're writing nonfiction and you want it to be crafted in a way that is engaging, that is compelling, that is going to hook your reader in and keep them drawn in through to the end of the book in a way that you're creating characters on the page that are, yes, based on real people in your life, whether that's you or others, that's considered creative. That's considered applying the craft of creative writing to nonfiction. That's all we mean when we say creative nonfiction. And yes, it is a little bit distinguished from like straight news reporting or maybe some types of nonfiction books, but I got to tell you, these days, I've been reading a lot of nonfiction books, and they still have a lot of creative writing applied to them. I'm trying to think of a recent nonfiction book that I've read that maybe you wouldn't necessarily automatically think of like qualifies as creative nonfiction. And of course, I can't come up with anything right off the top of my head. Next time, or if I do a deeper dive on this topic, for a future podcast episode, and leave a comment if that's something you'd like to hear. Okay, so today I want to talk about what if you're right on time? And I'll tell you about how this came to me. It's going to be a true personal story. So this is kind of what I mean about applying true stories to the thing that you want to impart to your listeners or your readers. So I'm going to tell you a story of an experience that I had and then help you take it in a way that you can relate it to your own situation in your own life, particularly, of course, when it relates to writing and publishing. So when we think about the question, what if you're right on time? What if you are right on time? What if you, Janna, are right on time? That's me saying the question to myself. So swap out Janna for your own name and say to yourself, what if you, Janna, are right on time? And then you can even modify it to say, what if your book project is right on time? What if your dream of getting published is right on time? What if your writing schedule is right on time? What if your project, your book project, your publishing project, what if that project is right on schedule? It's right on time. So here's the experience that I had. It's March 3rd, the day that I'm recording this episode, but it's not going to release to you for 2 or 3 weeks. I think it's going to release on March 18th, so 2 weeks from today. So the beginning of this year started at the end of January and went through February. 6 weeks I was in a coaching program because I do programs for myself periodically when they make sense for me, and also when the business budget allows for it. And I just take the opportunity to get outside perspective on what I'm doing, to get encouragement, to get support, to help me think and see things in a different way that maybe I have some blind spots to, and to help me just keep going. You know, I started this business in 2020, January of 2020, and here it is, March 2025. So it's been 5 years, 5+ years. And one of those years, I was not taking on new clients because I was recovering from my relapse of MS, which I talked about on the first episode of this podcast, relaunching it. So if you go back into the archive and look for the podcast episode at the beginning of February, the first episode that published to relaunch this podcast in 2025, I shared that story of experiencing a relapse of MS and recovering from that. And I think I consider myself to still be in recovery. I have recovered significantly, but I'm not back to 100% of where I was previous to the relapse, and I may never be. So part of what I have to do on a daily basis is accept where I am, but also continue to take care of myself and do all of my healing activities in the hopes that I will continue to recover and regain 100% of what I lost as a result of that relapse. So that's a little bit of a sidetrack, but I was talking about being in business for 5 years, and one of those years I was not taking on new clients because I was recovering. So 5 years since I started the business, but really only 4 years in business in total. Or actively doing business activities and doing the sales and marketing activities of taking on clients. And especially since returning to business work after the relapse, I've been doing a lot of pivoting. I've been trying to think about, okay, what changes can I make in how I run this business and how I do the work that I do so that things are more sustainable and manageable for me given the limits of my health. I do have some physical limitations now as a result of the relapse. So given those limitations, what changes and modifications do I need to do to my business, to the work that I do, so that I can still do it? And so sometimes working with a coach or getting outside perspective, like I said, is very helpful for me. So one of the things that I've been wanting to do for a while, I don't even know how long I've had this in my head, but I know that sunlight is something that really helps me, especially in the winter months when there's less daylight and there's less sun and the days are a little bit more gloomy because they're cloudy or overcast or whatever. And it is a connection with MS that people with MS frequently have vitamin D deficiency. And so I do take a vitamin D supplement, but also, of course, just getting out in the sun is helpful for boosting vitamin D levels naturally, right? And so I know, I mean, it's an easy thing for me to know that if I'm spending time in the sun, I usually feel better. And so for a while, I was taking a walk in the mornings. I would try to get up and take a walk outside. And that would be like a 40 minute commitment to like get up, put on my outside clothes, shoes, get outside, do like a loop around the neighborhood, return home, and whatever. Okay, 30 minutes. Not bad. 30 to 40 minutes, not bad. But sometimes even that level of energy exertion is hard for me first thing in the morning. And so for a while I had been thinking, okay, what is an easier way for me to get some sunlight first thing in the day? Well, I usually get up and make coffee. And I drink decaf coffee because I don't drink caffeine. It's one of the things that I do to help reduce inflammation in my body. I haven't had caffeine for probably 10 years or more than that since my diagnosis, which was in 2012. So here we are, 2025. It's been way more than 10 years, 13 years. So I make my coffee, and then lately, my husband and I will sit at our kitchen table and do the New York Times puzzle Wordle together, which is a nice way to just kind of like sit and have our coffee and start the day together. Well, I've been thinking, well, what if I could go sit outside with my coffee first thing in the morning? And as I've been doing this over the last couple of weeks, I started to journal while I'm sitting outside as well. So my husband and I will still do the Wordle together, and then either right after that or sometimes we'll do the Wordle after I sit outside. But anyway, that's besides the point. I'm getting sidetracked with like details here. So I've been wanting to do this, like sit outside with my coffee in the morning. And starting it in the wintertime is even harder, like I said, because the days may be a little cloudy. There might not be like direct sunlight. It's cold. I mean, if you're listening to this and you're anywhere other than California, you're probably laughing because it doesn't get nearly as cold here as it does in other parts of the country. But you know, in where I am in Sacramento, Northern California, we're in a valley. And so even in the wintertime, we can get temps in the 30s, usually in the mornings and evenings, like overnight and first thing in the morning. So that's cold. Like, do you want to go sit outside and drink your coffee when it's 30 degrees outside? No, I don't even want to do that when it's in the 40s or 50s. Okay. Well, we have one of those gas fire stove things where, you know, it's like a little table with some rocks in the middle, and you can just turn on the gas and it creates a fire. So I thought to myself, okay, I know what I can do. I can put the chairs in the yard where they face the way the sun rises. So in the morning I could sit and face the sun and move the fire pit over to those chairs and then sit there with the fire on while I drink my coffee. Okay, so I've been wanting to do this. And I even arranged everything in the yard the way I just described. And I still hadn't done it. And the biggest reason that I hadn't done it is I sleep a lot because of the fatigue that I experience. And I have a neurologist, and I also have a naturopathic doctor who specializes in MS. And they both have told me that I need to just sleep as much, like wake up when my body wakes up on its own, and sleep as much as my body needs to sleep, because that's when it's going to do its deepest repair work. So, okay, I'm going to sleep as much as I need to sleep, as long as I need to sleep. Well, up until this year, or maybe 6 to 9 months ago, that meant I was sleeping as late as 10:30 in the mornings some days. That's changed now, and I'm sleeping until like 9, usually at the latest. But even still, getting up at 9 o'clock, thinking about, the first thing I'm going to do is go sit outside and drink my coffee. I had this mental barrier around, 9 o'clock is really late. And I need to like get up and hurry up and get my coffee and just like open the computer and dive right into work because I'm behind. I was using these words, I'm behind. Like as soon as I wake up in the morning, I'm basically in my head telling myself I'm behind. And so I was in this group coaching program, and I was explaining this to the group with the gal who was the facilitator and the coach, because one of the first things that we did was talk about what are some of the habits that we want to incorporate this year and the shifts and changes that we want to apply to our work days so that things feel better. Like one of the goals of this group was to work on being aware of and focusing on how do we spend our time doing the things that feel good to us. Because when we feel good and when we're energized and we're overflowing with joy, that's the energy that we're emitting, and we will attract that. So how do we cultivate a greater sense of joy and purpose and even ease in ourselves so that we attract that back to us in the partnerships that we make, in the clients that we work with, in whatever it is that we're putting out into the world. Okay, so we started with what are the habits that we want to start implementing into our life and our days this year in 2025? What are the habits? And so I was sharing about this desire that I've been trying to figure out and work on, and I really want to just drink my coffee outside, but I wake up feeling behind. And so I sit inside, I do the Wordle with my husband, and then the very next thing that I do, and I'm still drinking my coffee, is like I have to have my computer and my laptop, and I just open the laptop and I dive right into work. And the person that I was working with says to me, okay, well, what if you're not behind? What if you're right on time? And I thought, oh. And she basically reflected back to me, your medical professionals, like the medical professionals who are part of your care team have told you that you need to allow your body to sleep as much as it needs to sleep and wake up whenever it decides it's time to wake up. And so when you wake up, you're on time. And I just thought, okay, because I've been feeling frustrated with the time that I wake up. I've been feeling like I should wake up earlier if I want to do things like have my coffee outside and journal and meditate and maybe even do like 30 minutes of yoga. I have been feeling like I should be getting up earlier to make the time to do those things, because for whatever reason, I've been telling myself in my head that my workday needs to start at 9 o'clock or whatever time it is. I've been telling myself that my workday needs to start at a specific time, but why? I'm in business for myself. I don't report to anyone. Who says that my workday has to start at a certain time? Me. So why don't I get to decide? Why can't I decide? Why don't I get to? I do get to. Why can't I decide that whenever my workday starts is when it's supposed to start? That it's right on time. That I'm starting my workday right on time whenever I start my workday. That whatever time it is that I wake up is right on time. And there is plenty of time for me to take my coffee and go sit outside and journal. And I have been doing that for almost, I think, 6 or 7 weeks. Not every day, because we've had a couple days of rain, so I don't go outside and do it when it's raining. And there are a couple days that I go to yoga at the studio in the morning, so I get up and do that instead of have my coffee outside. And there's been one or two other. Oh, I don't usually do it on the weekends because it's not a work day, and I'm usually getting right into whatever activities that Jeremy, my husband, and I are doing together on the weekends. So I've shared this a couple times with just a few friends. I have a friend who's a brand designer. And she's been working on rebranding, doing her own business rebrand and relaunching her brand. And she feels behind. She feels like she's been working on it for forever. Like she had the idea most of last year. And I think she has the visuals done, but she didn't have a photo shoot. And so she finally had a photo shoot a couple weeks ago. And she's been feeling pressured to like get it out there and to launch it. And so I shared this experience with her and I said, well, what if your rebrand is right on schedule? And she was like, oh, the same sort of like pressure release that I experienced when the coach that I was working with said it to me, she experienced. And so I knew I had to share this with my audience. So tomorrow's email is going to be focusing on the same theme. This idea of what if you're right on time? What if your book project is right on schedule? What if getting published, your dream of getting published is right on schedule? What if your writing schedule is right on time? Like whenever you sit down to write is on time. And just start telling yourself that as you're going about your life and your day, when you sit down to write, when you sit down to query, when you sit down to submit, whenever you sit down to do those activities, you are on time. You're doing it exactly when you're meant to be doing it. Because we often get, I know for sure I do this, and I know that a lot of the women I work with do this. We get caught up in this frenzy, frantic level of impatience around, oh, it's taking too long. Or I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm not giving my writing enough time. I'm not querying. I'm not publishing. I'm not spending the time that I need to be spending doing these things. If I really want to get published, I need to be like doing these things now. Or I have several clients who are in their 70s. And I know that it's probably very easy when you start to reach a certain age that you feel like you're running out of time because you're approaching what may be the end of life, and you don't know how much time you have left. You don't know how many years you have left. And so there could be this frantic pressure around, I'm running out of time. I have to have this done now. And all that does is create stress. Whereas if instead you could say to yourself, I am on time, and things are happening as exactly as they're meant to happen, when they're meant to happen. And just see how that starts to shift your perspective and your energy, and whether you can release some of that anxiety and stress. And how does that affect the way that you interact with your work and the way that you interact with whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish, whether you're still working on a manuscript, whether you're starting to query agents, whether you're submitting to contests or small press publishers or university presses, whether you're going to go to a conference later this month, like I'm going to AWP, where are you going to a conference like that? Are you going to AWP specifically? Because if you are, you should come visit me at Under the Country's booth, number 1213, where you attend a conference like that and you have all of this pent up anxiety around, oh, I got to do this. I got to see this person. I got to visit this person because I'm running out of time, and I got to make something happen now because it's taking forever and I don't know, and instead allowing yourself to trust. Like, what are you trusting? You're trusting yourself. Trust that you will know what to do. Trust that you have what you need. Trust that you will meet the right people, find the right opportunities, make the right connections, and you don't have to be rushing, and you don't have to feel like you're behind, and you don't have to feel like you're running out of time, because you are on time. Okay, I'm going to leave it there, and I'm going to remind you that by the time this episode comes out, I will have already gone to Alt Summit. I can't tell you how it was because I'm recording this before I go, but you're hearing it after I go. So next episode, maybe I'll be able to share with you how it was. But upcoming is AWP in another 2 weeks or so, week and a half, March 26th to the 29th in LA. And if you're going to be there, be sure to come by and visit me and say hello. The booth number in the book fair is 1213. I am hosting complimentary 15-minute book coaching consult sessions. If you're on my email list, you would have gotten the link to book a spot. If you're not on my email list, you can sign up at jannamarelease.com/keepintouch. Keep in touch is hyphenated. I'll drop the link in the Substack show notes post. Then the other thing that I'm doing in AWP is one of my favorite things to do. It's the joint offsite reading with fourth genre River Teeth Hippocampus Magazine, and that is happening Friday evening, March 28th from 6 to 8 p.m. at Bonaventure Brewing. It's open to anyone to attend. You don't have to be registered for the conference to attend this event, so even if you're just in the LA area, come on out for an evening of nonfiction, true stories. on a rooftop, like on an LA rooftop. That's where we're going to be at. Bonaventure is an outdoor space. I believe it's inside the West Inn Hotel, downtown LA. So I'll put all that info in the show notes and hope to see some of you in person in a couple weeks. You can follow Under the Gumtree on Instagram at Under Gumtree. You can follow me on Instagram at Janna Maron. And all these links and everything else will be in the Substack show notes. So head on over to Substack where you can subscribe to this podcast. More to the story, podcast.substack.com. Leave a comment. I would really love to hear from you and hear what you have to think about the podcast and how you're enjoying it. What questions do you have? If you have any questions about writing, editing, publishing, drop those. I'm happy to answer those in a future episode. And that's everything. The theme song was written and performed by my husband, Janna Maron, Existential Wine Guy on Instagram. You can follow him there if you're into the wine life. And I will talk to you again very soon on the next episode of More to the Story.